If you spend any time on couples or therapy TikTok lately, you think that every issue is a sex issue. This is so prevalent, in fact, that the word intimacy itself is largely used as a stand-in for sex. If we hear that people are having challenges in the intimacy department or successes, we assume that they're referring to their sex life. But I'm here to tell you that intimacy is a lot more than that, and that idea is the patriarchy talking. There's a disturbing trend among pop psychologists and even licensed therapists to reduce all connection problems to a basic, you're just not doing it enough. The reality is, sex can be a vessel for intimacy, but by and large, it's a natural byproduct of an existing intimate connection. As in, the intimacy creates sex as the output. The fact of the matter is, this idea views connection through an incredibly patriarchal lens. We end up using male satisfaction, performance, and access as the metric for relational health. And it leaves no space for different types of relationships. People who are asexual, people who are navigating betrayal, people who are survivors of sexual assault and abuse. It also leaves no space for platonic partnerships, or people who seek and find intimacy through art making, dance, prayer, and 2 a.m. phone calls. It also decenters largely women in their relationships. It decenters their pleasure, it decenters their consent, and it decenters their right to access intimacy in other forms. This isn't something that just hurts women and femmes. This is something that really hurts men too. Research shows that men, particularly straight men, cite their romantic partners as their only and singular source for romantic intimacy. Patriarchy conditions men to think that the only way that they can access vulnerability, physical touch, and affection is through sex. So instead of learning to express their emotional needs and have them met in a myriad of fulfilling ways, men are taught how to perform for sex and use access to sex as a metric for their self-esteem, because it's the only door that hasn't been locked. When intimacy for men is only allowed in exchange for sex, what happens when they're rejected? What happens when they don't feel particularly sexual but only have one pathway to get their intimacy needs met? What happens when they're aging, when they're grieving, when they want something that feels more like tenderness? This narrow definition of intimacy is leaving so many people behind. The purpose of intimacy itself is to draw near to each other. The word intimacy comes from the Latin word intimus, which means inmost. So we're talking about what's deepest. And in my mind, if we're going to be profound, it can't just be about fucking. This is where capitalism and patriarchy enter the chat again. When you collapse intimacy into sex, you create a captive market for chasing, fixing, solving, and proving your abilities in bed. You also end up othering entire groups of people. When we conflate sex with intimacy, we pathologize people that are touch sensitive or healing, people that are neurodivergent, completely ignore the deep emotional hunger in friendship and friendship's capacity to meet our needs around intimacy and connection. We assume that sex inherently means closeness when oftentimes it can be used as a tool for avoidance or objectification and exploitation. We ultimately decide that performance is the goal, not a sense of connected presence. What if the most intimate moment of your week didn't have to be in the bedroom? What if it was sending a crying or a laughing 2-minute-long voice note to your friend? When you held eye contact while telling a really difficult truth? Someone brought you soup without having to be asked? You need expansive, decolonized definitions of intimacy. Sex shouldn't be the only path we have to feeling held. We all deserve abundant options and pathways to feel near, dear, loved, seen, heard, and valued.